Hi, everybody.
Is that your only thing that you do?
Yeah, that's it. I'm just a one-trick horse. That's all I have.
So we're back again.
Again. Woo. Yay.
If you kind of want to know what's been going on, there should be a video up by the time this comes out.
Yes.
So that'll explain everything that's been going on. Because it's a long-winded fucking explanation and it would take up an entire episode.
It would.
So.
It's a long, sad coronavirus, but we didn't catch it tail, basically.
Yeah. Basically, the coronavirus fucked us up.
Yeah.
Without us actually catching it.
Yeah.
So it's basically ruined our year.
Pretty much. I mean, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, our entire year is ruined.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yep. So that's that.
But we're still here. So what have we been up to aside from all that really sad shit?
Really happy things. You're a plant mama now.
Ah, yeah, I'm a plant mama. I don't know why, but I've suddenly become this kind of cottage goth.
Yeah.
Kind of aesthetic, and I don't know where it came from.
You just seem to like wake up one morning and decide, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be a cottage person. Yeah. Basically.
So, like, currently, as we're recording, I'm in a flowery dress and mustard fucking tights.
It is a sight to behold, let me tell you.
Yeah. And I now own plants.
Yeah, so. You're quite a successful plant mama.
Yeah, I have like 7 plants.
Yeah, and none of them are dead.
None of them are dead yet.
So well done for that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, go me.
Yeah.
You got a new car?
I got a new car, so that's that. Like, for the past... I mean, I'm going to... I think we're allowed to do an episode about my accident now, aren't we?
Yeah.
We are, yeah.
Not an episode, we'll do a YouTube video.
We'll do a YouTube video. So, for those of you who don't know, I had a bad industrial accident maybe, 2016?
Yeah.
How many years ago is that now?
4 years ago.
4 years ago. So I had a bad industrial accident 4 years ago. And because of that, without spoilers, I had to not use stick or manual cars anymore. Yeah. Amongst other things. And because of money and everything, we've only been able to afford bangers, really.
Like, really fucked up
really,
bangers.
Really kind of rough shit.
Yeah.
And now we've bought what's probably the newest vehicle I've owned.
Still 10 years old. But...
Still 10 years old, but it is the newest vehicle I've owned. So
it's a nice car.
It is. It's my baby.
Yeah.
So
that's
what I've been doing.
That's what you've been doing. We haven't really... Well, I've started drawing again. I don't know if I mentioned that in the last episode, but I've been drawing. Not so much recently because of all the stress.
Yeah.
Just haven't felt any creativity. I think that's what's kind of gotten to us.
Yeah, that's the thing, I think, is not knowing what's going on and then knowing what's going on and not liking it.
Yeah, like we struggled making a new routine. It's taken us a very long time to...
Yeah, and really it's taken us getting back to a somewhat of an old routine to get back into a new routine with me like going to work and things now. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at.
Like we've been working out and eating healthy.
Yeah, I actually bought fucking workout clothing today. And I cooked quinoa. That fucking
grain shit.
I cooked that yesterday for the first time ever.
Which we still haven't eaten. Yeah, so... I don't know, like, a lot of the stuff we talk about in the YouTube video kind of covers
Yeah, it explains a lot more than what we could talk around the podcast. Because,
we didn't want to, make this a 20-minute intro about where we've been and give another fucking explanation about where we've been.
Yeah, it's easier just to see it on camera.
Yeah. So there's that. That's it. Should we just fucking go to the episode?
Let's do it.
No.
No?
We do.
No.
No, that actually happened.
Oh, yeah, we do news first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'll go first.
Go for it.
So, mine is from 4 days ago. So, the headline reads, Potato Poltergeist Plagues Indian City.
Pardon?
No, Indian Family, sorry.
Potato Poltergeist.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, then.
I'm going to explain what that means right now.
Please do.
So, a family in India believes that some kind of supernatural force has been raining stones and potatoes onto the roof of their home.
That's a very specific root vegetable to be having rained on you.
As well as throwing them inside the house. So, according to local media, the case started last Friday night, so about a full week ago now, in the community of Umtru when Kingstar Thongri...
I'm nearly certain that's how you pronounce that.
Kingstar Thongni heard a knock at the door of a neighbouring house where his parents live when there was no one to be found.
Okay.
And the family suspected that the mysterious sounds had been coming from some kind of troublemakers. So they phoned the cops, basically. They searched out everywhere and they found no sign of nothing. And then things started to get weirder. When stones suddenly began raining down on Kingstar's house. So the confused police, they couldn't figure out where the fucking rocks were falling from, obviously, because they don't exactly fall from clouds.
No.
So the family eventually, they vacated, they got the fuck out of there. They were like, nope.
No.
So they returned over the weekend, this past weekend, I think, where they discovered a box of potatoes had been opened and emptied inside their house.
That's a very specific thing to happen.
Yeah. Since the time they left to the time they returned, their home had been pelted with not just stones, but potatoes as well.
Oh, lovely.
Basically. So they suspect it's like a paranormal entity.
They're just chucking potatoes and rocks around.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's my weird news.
Well, I originally had something different. I had a thing, and it was a thing, and that was one of my weird news. And then I looked at the trending articles this morning, and I decided to throw all that out. So now we are totally unscripted. Hey! So what it is that the Pentagon have said this morning that they are going to release records of... They said like UFO sort of vehicles and sightings and things. And it's sort of alluding to that there is definitely materials or vehicles that have crashed on Earth that are unidentified flying objects, and nothing that they could have... They sort of say that it's nothing that they could have made.
Right. And then you brought up an interesting point this morning, like why are they choosing now
And why are they choosing now to release it? Is it so that someone's going to leak it anyway, or are they coming?
I don't think they're coming.
No, I think there'll probably be other things that we'd be able to notice if they were coming, hopefully.
But like, the thing is with the government, and especially the government over there, they like to declassify stuff 30 years after it's been found. They
do. And it does sort of... It's very weird wording in the article. It kind of says that... It doesn't say alien, it says stuff that they haven't built, or it doesn't belong to them, with the implication that it could be something from a foreign country as much as it could be from a foreign world.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It's very strange. And for it to come not long after the CIA released their documents about how life is a simulation.
Yeah,
basically.
we're not talking about that right now.
I find it really interesting.
So, well, we'll come to that another day, because I don't really feel like trying to figure out if I'm in a simulation or not.
Yeah.
So...
We had a great conversation about that the other day.
It made my head hurt and I didn't like it. That's it, really.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. I mean...
That's what you get for being unscripted.
That's what I get for being unscripted. Like, I mean, the thing to take away from it is that they're declassifying something that they found that doesn't belong to the US or its allies, but was around, like, US air bases and stuff.
Yeah.
And they saying it could be a vehicle or it could be materials or something like that.
Yeah.
They're being purposely vague around that point, and like, I don't know, is it alien, is it not? It's hard to tell.
Well, where does it come from?
I mean, it could be something that like the Chinese or the Russians have been putting above the bases and things.
Why is it always the Chinese or the Russians?
Because they're America's big enemies, aren't they? So like, it could be something like that. It could be an alien thing.
Could be.
So until the stuff gets declassified, we don't really know.
When are they releasing it?
It didn't say. It said in the future or soon. So interesting. I think it's got to go through like Congress and stuff to be properly released yet. So it could be a while before we actually see anything. And it could turn out to be nothing as well.
Yeah.
It could just be a load of sensationalist nonsense. There's that too.
Could be.
So
shall we move on?
Yeah, go for it.
To the episode. This one's been on our list for a very long time. I actually think this one's been on our list since we started the podcast.
Probably.
Since we started this whole thing. So yeah, Highgate Cemetery, the Highgate Vampire,
and all that goodness,
all the good shit. So when we were in London last, we never actually went here.
No, we didn't really have time, did we?
No, not really. We weren't far from it, but it's just you have to book a certain slot.
Yeah, you have to book your appointments and things. And
we didn't get a chance to because we were there for 2 days.
Yeah.
So next time we get to London,
definitely,
when this coronavirus fucks off,
when we're allowed to travel again.
Well, we can travel there.
No, we can travel there. We just got to fucking quarantine afterwards.
Quarantine. Yeah. Okay, so I'll start.
Go for it.
I'm gonna go ahead and start. I don't know how long this episode is gonna be because I think we've about 10 pages of research.
Probably.
between us. So, yeah, I'm just going to go into the history of this place.
It's all you.
So, Highgate Cemetery. In the early 1800s, the population of London was reaching over 1 million residents. So for the time, that was pretty unheard of, and it was still growing.
Yeah.
Nowhere really in the UK had seen that high of numbers concentrated into the one area alone. So because they were all compacted, the mortality rate was sky high.
Then you have things like disease outbreaks and murders and things like that.
So like you got diseases like cholera and smallpox claiming like thousands of lives in each day, but then the growth rate of the population was also
very high,
like thousands a day. So the truth is basically London just wasn't equipped to deal with the rise in population or the rise in deaths. So because it wasn't equipped, they very quickly ran out of space to bury the people.
I can see how that would be a problem.
Yeah, and they resorted to burying their dead in streets and in alleyways.
Just, anywhere they drop, they just dig a small hole and shove them in?
Basically, they had no space. They had no space. So there was an uprising in illegal burials where undertakers dressed as members of the church and they performed burials in the streets.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Is it a man in a trench coat who's just got a shovel hidden in his trench coat?
Pretty much, yeah.
Nice.
It's hard to imagine illegal burials.
Yeah, wow.
But then we've always had space to bury our dead.
That's also true. It's never really been a concern, has it?
No. So during these illegal burials, a concoction called quicklime was spread over the bodies to quicken the decomposition of the bodies so that the gravesites could be used again in just a few months.
That's what some murderers do now as well.
Yeah?
Whenever you're in like a movie and you see them throw the white stuff over the bodies.
How do you know this?
That's quicklime.
How do you know this?
Anyway, so that's what they're chucking over the bodies is the quicklime.
Jerry McCann would like to know your location.
Fucking Jerry Wow. Wow. You could have picked anything else.
I could have, but
you chose that.
Yeah. Madeleine McCann's been in the news.
Like, you chose that specifically.
Apparently she's got a new family.
I hope they keep her.
I hope they keep her as well.
Because the McCanns obviously don't deserve it. Look, right, anyway.
So by the 1830s, the situation had gotten so bad that the Parliament had to step in and declared the situation an emergency.
Fair enough. I mean, it's fine. It's fine.
Huh?
It's fine. Carry on.
Are you okay?
I am okay.
Okay. They passed a statute that made it possible to create 7 new cemeteries in the London and the surrounding London boroughs.
Weren't they called like the Magnificent Seven or something like that?
They were. That was my next point.
Sorry. My bad.
So this was basically just to deal with the huge influx of deaths that London was getting at the time. So the Magnificent Seven consisted of Kensal Green, West Norwood, Abney Park, Brompton, Nunhead, Tower Hamlets and Highgate.
I thought you were going to say Crompton then.
No, Brompton.
I was going to make a funny thing out of it and everything.
But Crompton isn't in London.
I know Crompton isn't in London.
So why would I say it?
Right. No. Carry on.
I'm sorry, your joke was funny.
Thank you. That's all I wanted.
Okay. So I won't really be talking about the other cemeteries because they're not really that interesting, to be honest. It's just Highgate. So in 1836, the London Cemetery Company was created. Parliament had appointed Stephen Geary as head architect and David Ramsay as landscaper. So I did a bit of digging. And I find this really strange, and I don't know why I find it really strange. But Stephen Geary, I genuinely don't know why he was picked for such a big task. He had a bit of a history of designing things that never came into fruition.
Okay.
Or designing high-profile buildings that ended up getting destroyed.
Right.
Basically, I don't know why. But I think if you're planning on investing so much money into something, wouldn't you want someone who's actually good?
Yeah, you'd want someone who's somewhat competent. Unless it was because, like, it was one of those things that they just wanted to, kind of go away, so they just gave it to the first person they could think of.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
But basically, this Stephen Geary, the only thing he is known for is Highgate Cemetery, designing Highgate Cemetery.
I mean, there's worse things to be known for.
It's really nice because, like, it has weird influences on its architecture. So, like, it's got Egyptian and Gothic influences.
It's very strange. That's in the fucking West Cemetery, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where all the big fancy tombs are.
Yeah, the old part.
The old part.
So they're just architectural styles that aren't usually seen together in one place.
Just a bit of a mishmash.
So in 1839, Parliament paid about £3,500 for 17 acres of the Ashurst estate in the borough of Highgate, and which translates to about £391,000 when you take inflation.
Okay.
I used an online calculator for that, but it's probably more above at least £1 million.
Yeah.
Because the price of land has increased and stuff like that. So for those times, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
In the middle of 1839, the cemetery was dedicated to St. James by the Lord Bishop of London. What does this mean, you may ask?
What does this mean?
Thank you. It means that the cemetery was exclusively from members of the Church of England.
Okay.
If you were not a member of the Church of England, you could not be buried here. Apart from 2 out of the 17 acres that they set aside for heathens and dissenters.
Lovely.
How thoughtful.
I mean, at least they set some part of the cemetery aside for them, I suppose.
And then 6 days after this consecration, the first person was buried here. Her name was Elizabeth Jackson, and she was 36 years old.
Okay. There you go. Poor her, I guess. You're going to be the first at something in your life, I suppose.
I think that was like... Was that like the average age of dying back then or something
Depending
like that?
on your social class, though, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because, like, social classes were a really big thing. So but then again, would a working class person be buried in somewhere like Highgate Cemetery?
But it wasn't until later on that it became a very popular cemetery.
Okay, so it was just a cemetery.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So yeah, after this burial, the cemetery quickly rose to become the most popular cemetery in the city.
Of all the Victorians were weird. Like, how can you have a popular cemetery?
Yeah.
Like, Victorians are just weird.
Do you want me to tell you why this cemetery was most popular?
Go for it.
The reason this cemetery was most popular is because of the architecture, but also because it was the highest. It sat 375 feet above sea level, so you had really nice views all over the city, and it was just really nice.
Yeah, but you're dead.
Yeah.
So
I genuinely don't understand it.
Fair enough.
The wealthy people of London were encouraged to invest in plots.
So
for themselves.
It was a bit of a scam then, was it?
Yeah, which defeated the purpose of having the cemeteries built. Like, you can't bury the dead if people have already bought the fucking plots.
Yeah, well, rich people be rich.
And, like, it's just the whole concept doesn't compute with me. Like you know, it's nice to look at.
Yeah.
But, like, you're not going to fucking see it when you're dead.
Yeah, you're not really going to get the benefit of it, are you?
No, you're not.
So, it does beg the question about the whole sort of funeral industry, really, doesn't it? But anyway.
But, like, buying land that you won't even... You just get fucking... Just get cremated.
Well, it's like Nicolas Cage, isn't it? He's bought a plot in one of New Orleans cemeteries.
Yeah, St. Louis.
$10,000-$15,000.
And the rest. He's got that big...
It's a big obnoxious fucking granite pyramid, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
So, you know, that's weird, man.
It's ridiculous. So, anyway. Due to the insane rise in popularity, in 1854, Parliament purchased a further 20 acres of land across the road, which is now known as the East Cemetery,
yes.
And the old part is known as the West Cemetery. The two cemeteries were actually linked together by an underground tunnel fitted with a hydraulic lift to lower coffins into the ground.
That's fancy.
And transport them between...
That is fancy. Again, that's a very Victorian thing.
It is, because you would get your blessing... Well, the dead person would get their blessing in the West Cemetery, be transported underground by the hydraulic lift to the East Cemetery, where there's actually space to be buried.
Well, it's very Victorian because it's totally unnecessary for them to have a hydraulic lift.
Well, they're just flexing, though.
They're just flexing because they can.
Yeah. Because all these wealthy people have bought plots.
Yeah, so they wanted, like, a bougie lift.
You think about it, right? How many people are buried there?
Many.
Thousands and thousands.
Actually, 170,000 people.
170,000
I have that
people.
on one of mine, so...
So if you think of that, if even each person who's buried there paid £1 for their plot...
Then, like, an old Victorian pound as well, not like a modern pound.
Yeah. They've already tripled, if not quadrupled, what they paid for that land. I hate the concept of cemeteries. I hate it.
Yeah, I like that you can go and pay your respects and stuff. It's the
But, like, you can pay your respects anyway.
It's the business, isn't it, behind them?
You can, like, if you think about how much you pay for a tombstone.
Yeah, that's true.
Thousands.
Yeah, especially the really ornate stuff.
Like, just spread their ashes somewhere and go and pay your respects there.
Yeah.
It's better for the environment.
Yeah. It's not good for their pockets, though, is it?
No, exactly.
So
it just doesn't compute with me.
Capitalism, yo.
Yo. So the East Cemetery was opened in 1856, but the first burial didn't take place until 1860. During the next decade or so, an average of 30 burials a day was taking place.
Wow, they were busy.
They were. And not long after that, the First World War began.
Ah, yes.
What happened was most of the cemetery's workers were called to fight, which left the love and care for the cemetery into nothing, basically. The cemetery was somehow kept running during the war, but by the 1930s, it was no secret that Highgate was basically on a steep and steady decline. Yeah. People just didn't want fancy burials anymore, and the demand for Highgate just wasn't there.
Yeah, it's a very Victorian thing to be buried at Highgate. Yeah. Like, the Victorians were a strange group because they were romantically obsessed with death, in a way. They romanticised it in a very peculiar way.
They were very, especially, I don't know, it was the fancy people.
Yeah.
The fancy Victorians that did it.
Like the wealthy upper class people.
And they could afford to be buried there.
And they could afford it.
So by 1960, the London Cemetery Company declared bankruptcy. And over the next 15 years, funds to keep the cemetery open diminished and the gates were closed.
Mm-hmm.
But more recently, in 1975, the Friends of Highgate Cemetery Group was formed, which was dedicated to the restoration and conservation of the cemetery.
Which is good.
It's really good. And up to this day, it's still an active cemetery. Burials are still taking place
yes,
there.
They are.
Basically kept running by tour donations and people paying to be buried there.
Yes. Do you want to know an interesting thing about some of the coffins at Highgate?
Do.
They were made of lead. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the problem with making a coffin out of lead is that when the body decomposes, it releases gases in a sealed coffin.
This. Yes.
In a sealed coffin. And some of them exploded.
Yes, there was this big thing. It was in the late 1800s, I think.
Yeah.
That a load of the bodies were just exploding.
Yeah.
And they thought it was like zombies or something like that. And so that's why there are some burial sites with iron gates
over the top of them. But the other thing they did was that they'd make the coffin with a little pipe in it that would come up to the surface.
Yeah.
And some of them you could actually light the top of the pipe with the gases coming out of it.
That's kind of gross.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
But there you go. So, like we said, there's around 170,000 people buried at Highgate. And out of these, there's at least 850, air quotes, notable people.
Right.
Okay, so you're talking about, like, in fact, I'll give you some figures. 18 Royal Academians.
Academians? Like the nuts?
No, that's macadamia. Fucking smart people.
Academics?
No, it's academians. Like,
is that an actual word?
It is a word.
I don't believe
No,
you.
it's a word. So people, it'd be like deans of Oxford and things like that, you know, like notable academics.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. 18 of those.
Right.
6 Lord Mayors of London.
Okay.
48 Fellows of the Royal Society.
What's the Royal Society?
Like another sort of academic society of people who are very smart.
Is that the Secret Handshake Club?
No, that's not the Secret Handshake Club.
Oh.
That's the Freemasons. There's probably a few of them kicking around in there as well. And we all know Karl Marx is buried in there, but I will come to him later.
He annoyed you, didn't he, during this?
No, he didn't annoy me.
He did annoy you, because you told me he annoyed you.
Okay, what annoyed me about that was that because Karl Marx is buried in Highgate, spoilers, Karl Marx is buried in Highgate, a lot of other very famous and very, like, accomplished people are buried there as well, but they don't get the recognition that I feel that they deserve.
Yeah.
So, because everyone focuses on Karl Marx. Like, that's just, it's not him that I'm annoyed at, it's the celebrity that he has when there's other people that deserve to be remembered as well.
Until researching this, I did not know who Karl Marx was.
Well, now you do. So, right, like I said, there's Karl Marx, but there's plenty of other, maybe not famous, but certainly notable people who've changed Western life that deserve to be remembered.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few of them. All right, so first on the list is Mr. Rowland Hill. Now, you've never heard of Rowland Hill before, I'm sure, but you've all used his invention before, because Mr. Rowland Hill was the inventor of the modern postal service. So
does that like so he was from London?
Yeah.
And
I don't know if he was from London or not.
Okay,
I can't
so
remember.
he was British.
But he was British, yeah.
So even the postal service that the Americans use is based on this?
If they use adhesive stamps and like a standardised postal charge, then yes. Because that's what he did. He came up with the idea of standardising the cost of a letter.
Yes.
As it was originally 1 penny.
Fucking inflation.
It fucking isn't now.
It fucking... We had to fucking send a letter up to fucking Cork the other day.
What was it? What is it, like 106 for a stamp?
€1 and 6 fucking cent to send a fucking letter.
The last letter I sent in the UK, a first-class stamp, was 96 pence.
Well, we're not in the UK
Well, I know we're not in the UK anymore, but that's just my contribution. Anyway.
You're fucking tan.
I'm going to have to take that out as well now. Right. So, yeah, that was what he did. He came up with the idea of standardising the cost of a letter to a penny, because that meant everyone could afford to send a letter. And to help with the standardisation, he came up with the idea of pre-printed envelopes and self-adhesive stamps. So, and the first stamp was a picture of Queen Victoria, and it was known as a penny black, because it cost a penny.
I wonder if there's any of those still around.
There probably is, but they'll be fucking expensive.
If any of stamp collectors are listening, message us and tell us if they're still...
Is our target demographic stamp collectors, do you think?
Well, like, I'm a plant mum now, so...
Well, you are a plant mum.
And you like olives now.
I do like olives, because I'm getting old. I like olives, but anyway. The next sort of person I'd want to talk about, another sort of not famous, but you've all definitely used one of these, the inventor of one of these, is Michael Faraday. And he's the man who invented the Bunsen burner.
I used those in science class.
Yeah.
I've never seen one since.
No, I haven't. I only get them now in labs and stuff, like actual laboratories that test things. So, but yeah, he's the one who came up with the Bunsen burner. But he also...
So was that a British invention as well?
It was. And he also laid a lot of, like, the groundwork for our understanding of electromagnetism and electronic induction.
That's all gone right over my head.
Well, basically, without him and the sort of work he did, we would be waiting a lot longer for things like electric motors and electric generators, because they all work on the principles that he came up with. He's the first one who wrapped some copper wire around a coil and noticed that things spin when you put them close to it. So
this is very quickly turning into Science with Craig.
It is turning into Science with Craig. And he also, which anyone who's a self-respecting conspiracy off-the-grid type of person would know about this, he's the inventor of the Faraday cage.
What is that?
The Faraday cage is a large mesh cage that goes around something, and it blocks all electronic signals going into it.
Is that like the thing that we saw in Griffith Observatory? Oh my god, what's it called? The big electric thing that was encased in
The
a
big
cage.
electric thing. The Van de Graaff generator.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The thing inside the cage was a Van de Graaff generator. The one that shot the lightning out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, is that what's encasing that?
Yes. That's a Faraday cage.
I'm smart.
Yeah. And so that blocks all electrical signals going into it.
Okay.
So you can't be traced if you're in a Faraday cage, because the radio waves and everything can't get through it.
Right.
So
you get no phone signal in there?
No phone signal, no nothing. So there you go. A very intelligent man, and I have a lot of respect for him, because I've worked with, like, we all use electric motors in one form or the other.
Do we?
Yeah.
Like what?
Our salt and pepper grinders have an electric motor in them.
Oh yeah.
So anything that moves in a circle and is powered by electric has an electric motor in it. CD players, DVD players, anything literally like that.
Yeah.
So there you go. Another very important person who you'll appreciate more than me is William Freese Green. He's the man who invented cinematography.
Oh.
So he was the first photographer to sort of experiment with moving pictures.
Yeah.
And he came up with, like, the first inception of a video camera in 1889.
That's insane.
And in fact, he came up with the idea of putting it on cellulose and then spinning it in front of a projector to see the images moving and stuff.
Yeah.
And he actually died penniless because he never secured the patent properly.
Oh no.
So everyone else got to benefit off of his invention, and he died penniless because he never renewed the patent.
That's fucking classic artist bullshit.
Yeah.
That you don't get famous until you die.
Nope. And he's the first person to record a moving scene.
Oh.
It's called The Leisurely Pedestrians, Open-Topped Buses and Handsome Cabs with Trotting Horses.
I want to YouTube that later.
So and by that he was the first person to see proper moving pictures on a screen as well.
Oh.
And he died penniless, unfortunately. So another particularly famous person is Douglas Adams, the more recent guy. He's an author. He's the one who wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Ah.
And he's into that. He did a lot of other stuff as well. He was an essay writer, a humorist, a satirist. That's why Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is so funny.
I've never read it.
Have you watched it?
No.
I think, no, you probably won't like it because it's obviously in space, but it's very silly and it's very funny.
Doesn't really sound like my thing.
Yeah, it's very entertaining though. An interesting entry is Alexander Litvenko. Now, he died in 2008, 2009?
Not long ago.
No,
then.
not long ago at all. He was the Russian diplomat and defector who was assassinated using polonium.
Why was he buried there then?
I have no idea. Because he was a diplomat. So he had dual citizenship and everything.
Oh.
And what they did to him was they came up and fucking stabbed a bit of polonium in him. And he died of radiation poisoning about a week or two later.
That's quite sad, actually.
Yeah, it's very sad.
I wonder what he did to get him assassinated.
I'm sure if you Google him enough, he wasn't very fond of the Russian state. And he was, like I say, he was a defector as well. And I think he was quite high up in like the diplomatic chain and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, he was. It was one of those sad assassinations where the man knows he's been assassinated. He knows he's dying, but he's still alive.
Oh.
Like after the event, there was a picture of him in hospital where he's laid in bed, dying of acute radiation sickness.
Aww.
Nothing they could do for him. So yeah, he's buried there. Charles Cruft, the man who founded the Cruft Dog Show, he's buried there. And of course, Karl Marx. So Karl Marx, they're called the father of communism, as we know it. He's not actually the author of the Communist Manifesto. He's the co-author. There was another man. Where's his fucking name gone? Friedrich Engels.
I've heard of him.
They wrote the Communist Manifesto together, and they didn't meet until Karl Marx had been at the University of Bonn. He was originally there to study law. And because Bonn was a notorious party university, and Mr. Marx liked to spend his time in beer halls, as everyone at university does, he got booted out of Bonn, sent to another one in France. That's where he met Friedrich Engels, and that's where they started working together.
Oh.
And they were actually banned from France for a while because of the Communist Manifesto.
Right.
So, yeah.
So they're not great people.
Well, I mean, there's an argument to be made about communism, if it's a good thing, if it's a bad thing. In theory, it's a good thing, but like everything else, it's open to corruption and turns into a very bad thing very quickly.
I feel like this current time is not the best time to be discussing communism.
No, but Karl Marx, I'm sure that the versions of communism that are around now are probably very far from Karl Marx's original vision of a workers' utopia.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
You're probably all listening to this because you want to hear the spooky stuff.
Yeah. You don't want to hear about dead people. Well, I mean, you do.
Wow.
But, dead people that have stayed dead is probably a better way.
So I'm going to chat about what is known as the Highgate Vampire. I didn't realise there was so much on this, and it actually ends pretty funnily.
Funnily.
Like, it's quite funny how it ends, to be honest.
The world is a vampire.
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Let's stop before we get copyright struck.
Right, so I'm going to go back right to 1963, when the cemetery was in huge disrepair. Vandalism of the cemetery was rife, and no one had been looking after it.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a shithole.
Highgate Cemetery, bit of a shithole.
In 1963, it's quite nice now. So 2 teenage girls were walking home from a friend's house, and their route took them past the Highgate Cemetery gates. It doesn't say which gate. The west part of the cemetery has
many gates.
A lot of gates. As they passed, they reported they saw creepy hovering faces and bodies rising from their grave.
Nice.
Not just one, several.
They weren't on LSD by any chance, were they? It was the 60s.
It was the 60s. So they basically they ran off, but there was no solid evidence to their story, just their words. But a short while later, so maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months later, it doesn't really say, a couple were walking down the same route past the cemetery, and as they passed the same gates, they reported that they saw a vile face.
Nice.
They stood there for a few minutes, basically just fucking frozen in shock, and they realised that this person must have been around 7 feet tall.
Jesus.
The facial features were so grotesque that they can only really be described as like your typical Nosferatu kind of face.
Like a shriveled up vampire.
Yeah. And the figure was dressed in a long black robe and had deep red eyes.
Nice.
Not really what you want to see in a cemetery.
No, I don't really fancy seeing that either, to be honest.
Over the next few months, other reports came in of other people seeing the exact same figure through the gates of the cemetery. Now, at this time, the cemetery wasn't really open.
Yeah.
So that's why most of the reports came in as seeing them through the gates, just to clear that up. Mm-hmm. One of the more notable reports being a man who was walking his dog saw a figure slide over the 15-foot wall.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a bit unnerving.
A couple of years later, in 1967, a girl who lived near the cemetery was woken up in the middle of the night by a feeling of a cold hand grabbing her and trying to yank her out of the bed.
Fucking hell.
And she saw a man with a hat.
Oh, him again.
Yeah. And woke up with real life bruises on her body.
Oh.
From the encounter. So it wasn't just like...
It wasn't just like a sleep paralysis thing.
What is also interesting to note is that people were actually reporting their sightings to local newspapers, and they started circulating the story. Very small.
Yeah, because they don't tend to give a lot of credit to supernatural stories.
No. So that could have also contributed to the sudden uprising in sightings because of this new rumour.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that a bit later. I have very strong feelings on that. In 1969, reports started coming into the British Psychic and Occult Society.
Didn't even know that was a thing. Apparently it is.
Yeah. I'm just going to call it BPOS.
BPOS.
Because it's a fucking tongue twister and I really don't want to keep saying it. So,
hey, yo, see you at BPOS.
BPOS it is. So because these sightings were being reported to newspapers and police, but nothing was being done about it, people started reporting it to the British Psychic and Occult Society.
What's their name then?
BPOS.
Is that the same thing?
Yes.
Oh, whoops. It's alright, we're cool.
So this caught the attention of local occultist David Farron. I used his book for a lot of this research, so...
Fair enough.
Thanks to him.
Tanks.
Cheers, fam. He decided he wanted to investigate this.
Okay.
He traced one of the anonymous reports to a man named Thornton. Not his actual name. He still wanted to remain anonymous.
Yeah.
But through this entire story, he's called Thornton. He claimed he had been hypnotized by something while he was in Highgate Cemetery one afternoon. As it got darker, he decided to leave, probably pretty spooked by the whole kind of thing. But he got very confused and he couldn't remember his way out. But he didn't get kind of agitated or panicked or anything. Yeah. He kind of calmly walked to the gate when he felt a presence of someone behind him. And I'm just going to quote David Farron's book now on what happened next because it's really good. Can't put it any better than that. So, quote, swinging around less than 6 feet away, he saw a tall, dark spectre hovering just above the ground. He found himself transfixed to the spot, completely unable to move, drained of energy by some powerful hypnotic force that in a matter of seconds rendered him unconscious to any sense of time or his surroundings. So great was the intensity of this force that he remained like this for several minutes, or what seemed like several minutes, before the spectre abruptly vanished and he slowly regained his normal faculties.
That End sounds horrible.
End quote. So speaking after the incident, Thornton had said that he felt as though the being had hunted him down specifically.
It was like a targeted attack then?
Yeah, to either hurt him or cause serious harm. Now, David himself said that Thornton seemed to be a trustworthy and truthful person. So
fair enough. I mean, you've got to take it with a bit of a grain, but, you know.
Use your own judgment on that. Many more accounts started to come into the police, the newspapers, the British Psychic and Occult Society, and they all seemed to echo Thornton's story. The same kind of spectre, the same feelings, the same everything. So much so that David started investigating the cemetery himself. He travelled to the cemetery one morning and he spent several hours there just walking around and kind of scoping out the place.
Several hours?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time.
It's a big place though.
Even so, several hours.
Yeah. He kind of made quite a big note about how the cemetery was in such a state of disrepair and the amount of grave robbing and vandalism that was going on at the time. He also noted on his report that on one of the paths there was a dead body of a fox, and I think he took note of this because there was no sign indicating the cause of death.
Yeah, it was just a dead body there.
Now, foxes are very much like dogs. They go and hide when they know they're going to die. And so the fact that it was in the middle of the main pathway...
It's a little bit suspicious. ...of
the cemetery is quite strange. We'll come back to this later because there's more of that shit. So on the eve of the winter solstice in 1969, he visited the cemetery again. I think he left at like 11 p.m. and got to the cemetery for about midnight. Straight away, he noted that he felt like he wasn't alone when he arrived.
Okay.
And what I really like about this is his first focus was trying to debunk some of the previous claims.
That's always a good start if they're trying to debunk it.
So he basically followed in the footsteps of some of the people who were reporting this.
Yeah.
And tried to look where they saw this spectre.
Yeah.
And see if there was anything around that could mimic
That looked...
the shape of it, like that could play a trick on the eye.
Yeah, so make sure that they weren't just seeing things.
He didn't find anything.
Okay, that's concerning.
He kept going around for a couple of hours, and then he found something.
Oh.
He found the tall black figure.
Fun.
It was so clear that he actually thought it was a person until he realised that it was 7 feet tall.
Could be a really big person.
Could have. The figure then turned towards him, and David immediately noted the red eyes. He said that the figure had no recognisable features, only a vague shape of a body and the grotesque face.
Right. That sounds like I'd be going in the opposite direction pretty quickly.
He looked away, starting to feel the same psychic attack symptoms that Thornton had previously stated. And when he looked back, the figure had disappeared.
Okay.
So after this, the next day, David basically tore up to the British Psychic and Occult Society and pretty much demanded that they do a continuous investigation on Highgate Cemetery.
I think that's not unreasonable either, to be honest.
Yeah, basically with like full investigative equipment, like video cameras, and all the ghost hunting shit. They agreed. The investigation properly began in January of 1970. David decided to dig in and research reports of the sightings and came to the shocking realisation that the reports hadn't actually started in the 60s, but they'd actually started in the Victorian era.
Oh, they probably put a lot of that down against the Victorian fantasism and stuff, but so it's been around for a lot longer than people originally thought?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yes. And this is where this spectre began being associated with the vampire.
Okay.
The Victorians had noted vampiric qualities about the spectre.
I bet it was spelt with a Y as well.
Probably.
Yeah.
You know that.
That's the kind of thing that they do.
Like, Victorians, as we said, were very interested in death, and they were pretty obsessed with vampires.
Yeah.
And the thought of vampires. And it's worth actually noting that Bram Stoker actually makes a direct reference to Highgate in his book.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was the final resting place of one of Count Dracula's associates, I think. So, have you actually read Dracula?
Not all the way through, no.
No?
No.
Very good. Very good. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. So, in February, David put out a public plea for information through a local newspaper. In this article, David asks if anyone has seen the figure, which a number of people...
Are you okay?
No! A number of people replied back to the article saying that they had. There weren't all kind of uniform reports. Some said that they saw like a ghost of someone on a bicycle, but the majority saw the same figure. Through this article, a bishop called Sean Manchester came forward to elaborate on this. This is where things kind of start.
And yeah, I know about this. It gets wild.
They start getting ridiculous.
It gets wild.
He claimed that this figure was a medieval magician who had been disturbed and raised by Satanists.
It's always the Satanists.
Not the good modern day Satanists, you know, the ones that believe in like yourself as the higher power and everything like that. This was like the old
actual Satanists.
The old bad Satanists, like pre Anton LaVey.
Like the sacrificing, virgin, drinking blood Satanists.
And in David's investigations, there were in fact a lot of evidence of satanic practice in the cemetery. There were inverted crosses, pentagrams, tombs that had been turned into ritual chambers, etc., etc., etc.
Always the Satanists.
In the converted tomb, there was kind of evidence of a rite to the old kings of hell that took place.
Oh, fun. Just what you want.
Yeah, and the British Psychic and Occult Society was clued up on Satanists, which is kind of how they knew this. Mm. And they kind of concluded that these weren't kids being edgy or anything like that. These were professional Satanists.
Professional Satanists.
And just the way it was done, and the setup and everything, like they were pretty sure that this was professional people.
Imagine being a professional Satanist.
On your CV.
Yeah.
So this kind of did give Sean's story a bit of weight, which is interesting, because this was the first time any connection like that had been made. Over the next 2 weeks, 2 of the British Psychic and Occult Society members had seen this figure on 2 separate occasions, and both accounts, they kind of mirrored all previous accounts. Red eyes, 7 feet tall.
So by this point, you can argue that it's pretty solid that it's happening because you've had so many accounts, different accounts saying similar things.
Pretty much. When they tried to take photos of the figure, it disappeared.
That is rather convenient, though.
Yeah. Although, when they did look at the photos, dead foxes were in the photos.
Oh, nice.
You remember when we spoke about that earlier?
Yeah.
Which is really strange.
This is rather bizarre.
Not only do foxes not really come around cities that much.
Well, they do, but just when there's not people around.
Yeah, which is very strange. So during this time, people were still coming forward with their own reports and accounts of the vampire. This is where I start to get bothered. This is where, I start losing a bit of interest.
Yeah.
In accounts. I'm just not sure how accurate these reports can be. This was an investigation, right? Now, this wasn't like a criminal investigation, obviously, and it rightly shouldn't be.
Yeah.
No real crime has been committed. But the things that happen during a criminal investigation, like asking for information but withholding evidence and accounts from the public, this wasn't happening.
No.
So what people saw was being published in these newspapers.
And then people are just going to start copying what they've seen in newspapers to get some attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're looking for their 30 seconds of fame.
Yeah, of course
whatever.
they are.
The newspapers, they published other readers' accounts, details about the investigation, like the satanic rituals, and even the dead foxes.
Yeah.
So people aren't truthful.
No, of course not. Why would they be when they can just say not exactly the same, but different yet similar enough to what the newspapers have said, and they can get a quick mention in the paper?
There's no control here at all.
No.
There's no this story must be true because it matched ours, because there's no way they can know. Not.
Yeah, so, it does make their findings somewhat questionable.
And that's why I'm really not going to talk that much about accounts from here on, because I just don't believe them.
No, I think that's fair as well.
But basically, the amount of accounts that came in, it caused such a stir that the British Psychic and Occult Society started getting letters from the alleged Satanists.
God.
Threatening that they needed to stop their investigation or they will die by the hand of one of their satanic gods. And this letter was signed in blood.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
The TV station ITV even caught wind of the investigation, and they decided they wanted to film it.
Okay.
But they were only allowed to film outside the gates. While they were filming, though, one of the cameramen randomly started clutching his throat, and he passed out. And filming was postponed until they found a replacement.
That is rather bizarre, though.
That is strange. They were due to start filming and airing shit on Friday the 13th.
Of course, duh. When else would you film and air something like this?
But this was put to a stop as the locals got wind of this, and they absolutely fucking mobbed the cemetery.
Of course.
There were fucking people climbing the gates and everything. David Farron, after this, decided to do an interview to try and calm down the people and try and downplay what was happening. This was futile because other people were also doing interviews and sensationalising the story. So there was a bit of back and forth, like conflict of interest.
So this is just a good case of things getting out of hand.
Yeah, and people actually started arriving to the cemetery with pitchforks, fire and weapons. Literally.
A good old-fashioned lynching.
It's exactly what happened. And this made it incredibly difficult for the British Psychic and Occult Society to continue with their investigations. What they decided to do was an active ceremony, kind of like a seance, to try and make contact with the entity so that they could move forward in the investigation. Yeah. What they really wanted to do was to see what this spectre was, whether it was someone that was trapped, who needed help moving on, something evil that needed to be banished, or something...
an actual vampire.
Or an actual vampire, or something like a demon or something like that. This was planned for August of 1970, but just before the investigation was due to take place, a body of a woman was dragged from one of the tombs and placed on the main pathway of the cemetery with a stake through her heart.
Oh,
Two teenage girls found her.
Oh.
Yeah.
I bet they needed some therapy after that.
Yeah, it's not great.
No.
It was basically concluded that it was either the Satanists who did this as a warning or a local who'd kind of taken things too far with their pitchfork and shit like that.
The wrong person got a good old-fashioned lynching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did the ritual a couple of days later. They began the ceremony. They opened the circle. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. You basically cast like a protective energy around you and stuff. They heard the police. They weren't actually supposed to be in the cemetery. They didn't have permission to be in there. This panicked them, and because they couldn't leave the circle. If you leave the circle open, you're leaving basically like a gateway for any entities to come on through.
And in the middle of a cemetery like Highgate, that's generally regarded as not a good idea.
No.
It'd be like, they'd rather if you didn't do that.
Yeah. They had to really quickly close it, and David ended up getting arrested.
Nice.
He was accused of the desecration of the woman's body, actually.
Ooh.
Apparently, someone had seen him leaving the cemetery with a stake.
And not the tasty kind.
No. But this later turned out to be the athame that was used to cast the circle.
Do the casting of the circle.
Yeah. So he got let off anyway. But the media absolutely ruined him. Like, they came.
Oh, I imagine
came
they will
for
have
him.
done as well. Yeah, I can definitely imagine they will have done.
Basically saying that he orchestrated this whole thing and he made up the image of the Highgate Vampire and everything like that. There was so much controversy and spotlight on the Highgate Cemetery that the Satanists who originally practiced there decided to back off and practice elsewhere.
When you've put that much attention on something that even professional Satanists are just like, you know what? We can go. We don't need this.
Yeah, we don't need this kind of shit.
We don't need this.
Over the next couple of years, reports continued to come in, seeing the same figure over and over and over, and just having it disappear and stuff like that. The British Psychic and Occult Society decided to try their ritual again and try and banish the entity. They reported this ritual as like a partial success.
Yeah.
Whereas they managed to dismiss the entity kind of like away from the cemetery, but they didn't kind of completely banish it.
Be gone.
Yeah, just like fuck off over there on the road. Like.
Yeah. Fuck off, sir. Go on, off you go.
Because of this, they decided to try and start up their investigation again because they didn't completely get rid of it. The London police were like, no.
No.
They completely locked down the cemetery because of the uproar it was causing in the city.
I can imagine it was causing them a real headache trying to control all these people.
Just the amount of vandalism and antisocial behaviour and stuff like that. Both David and Sean Manchester decided, like, no, we're going to continue.
Yeah. Fuck the police.
There ended up being a bit of a competition between both of them.
Didn't they? Am I thinking of something else? But didn't they end up actually doing a wizard's duel?
Yeah. No, Sean Manchester challenged David Farron to a wizard's duel.
That was it, yeah.
I don't think David actually showed up.
No, but I know one of them actually challenged the other one to a duel.
Yeah. So they both entered into a whose dick's bigger contest.
But with wands.
Yeah. And I think, like, David was even photographed wearing a shirt that said that Sean was crazy.
For fuck's.
Yeah.
When your occult society has beef.
Yeah. It was all really petty bullshit.
That's where all the best duels come from, though.
It's
just petty bullshit.
Ridiculous. So, like, over the next several years, both Sean and David went on to write books.
Okay, and they were both ripping each other to shreds in these books, I'm assuming. Is it basically like Tiger King? That's what I'm imagining it. I'm imagining one of them being like Joe Exotic.
Yeah.
Just like, that bitch David. Constantly. That's how I imagine it.
It's exactly what it is. But Sean Manchester, he went on to say that he killed the Highgate Vampire.
That's a very strong claim to make.
He beheaded it and he went to hell to try and find
Someone's
it.
been watching a few too many episodes of Supernatural, I think.
Yeah. So, bullshit, obviously, because reports still come in about the vampire.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to put a big doubt on that one.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, man's chatting shit.
So, that's about the Highgate Vampire.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm going to talk about some of the other hauntings in Highgate because with it being a big cemetery, a big old cemetery, you're going to get, like, the odd casual haunting. And you did touch on a few of the ones that I'm going to mention, but, like, I don't know, it seems like maybe there was something there. Maybe the Satanists did it. Maybe it's something that they fucking conjured or unleashed or what. Yeah. I don't know. But it just seems to have gotten so out of hand and so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, for two members of an establishment like the British Occult Society, I mean, I don't know how good or bad they are, but to be challenging each other to duels and writing books about it, you know, it seems to have gotten so out of hand.
It's all very petty. Like, it's kind of like David, he passed away, I think, last year or not so long ago. But to the day he died, he said the Highgate Vampire wasn't actually a vampire.
Really? What did he think it was then?
He thought it was just like a dark being, like something that the Satanists had conjured.
Yeah.
But it was Sean Manchester who kind of really driven home the fact that it was a vampire.
I wonder if that's because vampire, like, everyone knows what a vampire is.
Yeah.
Everyone's at least heard of Dracula.
Yeah.
So we all know what a vampire is. I wonder if that's why. Because it gives it a bit more sensationalism then.
Maybe.
I don't know. But yeah, so, like, with it being, we all know about the Highgate Vampire now. But there is a lot of other weird shit that happens in Highgate Cemetery. And this is like, usual things like shadows and mists and the odd knock and bang and people getting attacked and things like that. But there's some more sort of definite isolated events that happen as well. One of them's known as the Thornton Piano, and it's strange you mentioned the man was called Thornton.
Yeah.
Because there is a thing called the Thornton Piano.
What is it?
So this is around the tomb of a concert pianist called Harry Thornton, and he was very famous for entertaining troops in the First World War. He passed away during the flu epidemic in 1918, and it said that around...
Is that the Spanish flu?
Yeah. And it said that around the East Cemetery where his tomb is located, you can hear sad piano music, as if it's him playing his last sort of thing.
Aww.
So, and it's strange that I wonder if it was maybe a relative of his or something that was visiting his tomb and noticed that.
Possibly.
Which is why it would be called Thornton.
Well, maybe, actually.
So, you heard it here first. Apparently people have heard banshees around there as well.
No!
Banshee screams and things like that, as well as like moans and wails and stuff.
Nope.
There's apparently the raving grey-haired woman, and she's one of the more sort of well-known apparitions around Highgate, and the lane that goes between Highgate as well. She's not just in the cemetery, she's actually on the road as well. And what this legend sort of says around her is that she charges at full speed around the paths between the tombs, like running. Basically, Naruto running is how I imagine it.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And just, like, generally raving off her head. She's hunting for children that she's said to have murdered in a fit of rage in life.
Oh, no.
So, nice. There's nothing really sort of mentioned about if there's actually a woman buried in there that did that or not.
Yeah.
Like, that part just could be a bit of an urban legend, but that's one of the more well-seen ones.
Yeah.
Is the raving grey-haired woman. There's another one that's called the Shrouded Figure, which isn't as sinister as it sounds.
Yeah.
What the Shrouded Figure is that if you're wandering the path at night, say, you'll see, like, a shrouded figure in the path. Sort of.
But is that not very similar to the vampire?
Kind of. And what it tends to do is just be stargazing.
Aww.
Or looking focused at a point in the cemetery. And if you go too close, it just disappears. And then reappears further down the lane, a few metres away.
Like an Enderman?
Kind of like an Enderman, yeah. But less horrible, because when the Enderman get you, it's bad times.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a reverse Enderman. Doesn't really do anything to anybody, it's just there.
Yeah.
And then is not there, basically. You mentioned the cyclist.
Yeah.
The cyclist is one of the more well-spotted ones as well.
Yeah.
So there's a spectral cyclist that goes around the cemetery and around the lane and stuff. There's a nun that sort of floats around.
There's always a fucking nun.
There's always nuns. There's a nun that supposedly floats around. Now, this is interesting. There's supposed to be something called the Devil Ghoul.
The Devil Ghoul?
Which is a looming black shadow with piercing red eyes.
That's the Highgate Vampire.
That's the Highgate Vampire, but it's also called the Devil's Ghoul.
Interesting.
That is interesting. Apparently, the Devil's Ghoul has even leapt out of the wall of the cemetery to scare people as well.
Like the reports of the vampire.
So, there you go.
That's interesting.
A lot of people have said to see the floating faces and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
So, like, it could be all the same thing. It could not be. I don't know. Very strange.
But with the amount of people buried there, there's bound to be like.
Well, that's it. Like an old place like that, full of. But I mean, I read somewhere it might have even been a plague pit at some point as well.
Probably.
But they always say that about fucking.
But like half of fucking London was a plague pit.
Yeah, half of London's a plague pit. So you can't. How much can you really put sort of thing on that? But either way, though, it's still got a lot of dead people in there. Basically.
Yeah.
Like there must be some weird shit that happens.
There must be.
So.
No two ways about it.
Yeah, of course. Today, the cemetery is, like you said, it's in private hands and is not open to the public like a normal cemetery.
Yeah, you can't just walk in.
You can't just walk in. But it is, like you said, still used as a place of rest. So it serves northern London. It's a Grade 1 listed area with the Register of Historic Parks and Gardens of Special Historic Interest. Which basically means that any developments nearby, there has to be a full planning consultation around the cemetery, and anything that can remotely impact the cemetery or the wildlife in it gets banned.
That's crazy.
Which is why it's good to have a list like that.
One thing the UK's done right.
Yeah. So it's a home to a lot of like wildlife, like very sort of not rare but uncommon trees and wildflowers and plants and things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of those have grown without any human interference whatsoever.
Crazy.
So they've germinated themselves, planted themselves, grown,
that's nice.
and continued like that. It's home to a lot of foxes, small animals, birds, bats, burbs, and even rare orb weaver spiders, which were found in one of the tombs.
Oh, no.
They are large, apparently, as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they found those on a bat survey, and I think there's only like the one place in the UK they've been found.
No!
So, yeah, it's very strange. So, like you said, it's owned by the Friends of the Highgate Cemetery Trust. To cover the costs of maintaining and restoring it as best as they can, they do guided tours, and it's a pay-to-entry kind of thing. To get into the West Cemetery for a long time was only by guided tour.
Yeah.
For safety reasons, because a lot of these tombs were unstable and large trees and things like that. But now some limited areas are open to the public without a guide in the West Cemetery, which is pretty cool. The East Cemetery is self-guided. It's a ticketed entry. You can just buy a ticket, walk around it. It's like a normal cemetery.
The newer.
It's the newer side. There is actually a private area of the cemetery which is only accessible to the friends and relatives of the deceased.
That's nice, though.
And that is where George Michael's buried.
Is he?
It is.
Oh, that's nice.
So no one can see that. So Highgate is actually running out of space.
I'd imagine.
So what they're doing now is they are doing a scheme where they are trying to reclaim abandoned plots.
Right.
Where, like, say they belong to a family that's not been there for years, but they own the plot.
Yeah.
They're trying to reclaim the plot back off them. And obviously they'll not disturb anything or anything like that if they can help it. And then they will use that plot then to bury more people, if that makes sense. It's all... I'm not explaining it very well, but it's done in a very sort of respectful and considerate way.
It's still capitalism.
Yeah.
You still have to fucking pay to be buried on top of someone else.
You do, but what you're paying for there is to continue the preservation of the site. It's not so much because it's not for profit, it's for paying for the maintenance of the buildings and the maintenance of the architecture and stuff.
I don't agree with it, because, like, you're still paying out your ass for the tombstone, the land.
Oh yeah, you pay for all that but that doesn't go to the Highgate Trust.
No, but still.
Yeah.
It's just the whole concept of...
Oh no, I get it. Like, I'm only more okay with this is because it is going back into the cemetery. It's to go, like, say, it's to go for repairing things that have been damaged.
Yes.
And it's repairing the old historical tombs.
Yeah.
Like you say, some of those have been around for so long. You know,
but, like, why reclaim them and lose that?
It's things like graves that haven't got any markings on them anymore that have been long abandoned and that a lot
But, like, that's still part of the history.
It is still part of the history.
So you're losing that.
Yeah, there is that aspect to it.
You know, like, there are plenty of other cemeteries around that don't have such high importance as Highgate.
That's true. I meant to mention as well, there is a special corner, I think it's in the East Cemetery, for fallen firefighters. There's a monument to firefighters.
That's really nice.
There's in there, and then there's a big war grave in there as well, and there's things like that in it too.
That's really nice.
So, yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
So what do you think? Like, do you think there is an actual vampire in Highgate?
Maybe not a vampire. I see... Yeah, do vampires even exist? Like, you're taking... By assuming the Highgate Vampire is real, you're assuming that all vampires are real, which is another question for another day.
But not really, because... Like, from what I know of vampires, is there are, like, two types. There are, like, the sanguine vampires, where they're, like, your proper, like, Dracula.
I want to truck your... No, I want to truck your blood. What? I want to... No, never mind.
Aww.
It's gone. It's gone. Forget it. Move on.
I want to suck your blood.
That's the one.
That's the one. So, like, there are those ones, and then there's the, like, psychic vampires.
Yeah, that sort of, like, drain energy.
Drain your energy, and, like... I've definitely been around some psychic vampires, I can tell you that now. You ever been around someone and they've just... sucked all your fucking energy and you're just so exhausted being around them?
I mean, I put that down to their personality a lot of the time.
But, like, you don't know, you know?
I mean, in a roundabout way, I suppose, yeah.
You know, like, but what I do find interesting, though, is there aren't really a lot of credible photos of the Highgate Vampire.
No, there's not.
Considering that it was such a high-profile thing.
I do find that strange.
Like, I think while I was researching, I found 2.
Yeah.
And even then, they were questionable.
I mean, it comes back to the thing. Is there something there? Probably.
Probably. I mean, it's a place that's been around for 150 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be almost 200 years now.
Yeah, so
It's going to be haunted.
there's probably going to be something there.
If you believe in ghosts, it's safe to assume that Highgate is haunted.
And then to go further, if you do believe in things like demons and Satanism and that kind of thing, the fact that actual proper Satanists were fucking around there,
that's not a great sign.
no,
right?
like there may be something there that's a bit more sinister than just your average haunting.
Yeah.
Like there could be something like that loitering around.
Definitely.
So,
like, I want to go and we can report back.
yeah, I won't mind going actually.
I'd like to
I
go.
won't mind having a look around it and seeing some of the older tombs and stuff.
I'd like to see the architecture and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be pretty interesting.
But yeah.
So
that's it. That's it for this episode, and I swear it won't be as long next time.
yeah, we went on a tangent as we did. So, which is good because my Kindle has 1% battery left, which is timing really.
I've been charging my iPad throughout this whole thing,
So
and it's only on 26%.
yeah,
So yeah, thanks as always to our inmates on Patreon, Jen, Ray, and Ed.
big whoop.
Big up to you guys.
Yeah, give yourselves a pat on the back.
Job well done. 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
Patreon subscribers would recommend.
So yeah, if you like this episode, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All at Spectral Asylum. We sometimes post.
Yeah.
To be honest, not that much.
No.
We have a Facebook group, and we have a really great mod.
Yeah,
Her
Dee.
name-
Big shout out to Dee.
Big shout out to Dee. She kind of keeps it running for us, which is great. If you want, you can support us on Patreon. Once you see our video, you know, we're not really plugging that lately.
No.
Just because we don't feel like...
Yeah.
We don't feel like we're doing a lot.
No, we don't
for
really
it.
feel like we deserve it in a way.
But if you want to, it's there.
Yeah.
And then subscribe to us on YouTube, where we will post more videos. Our kind of explanation video should be up by now, and we have a couple more videos coming.
Yeah, there's a few other things and stuff.
Yeah. We're aiming to upload every week, but they'll be a bit sporadic throughout this whole thing, just because like we can't really go out and do stuff.
Yeah.
And we're kind of limited on what we can do inside.
Yeah.
But yeah, subscribe to us on there, and we'll see y'all next time.
That's copyright. You can't do that.
I don't think she has it copyrighted.
It's probably copyrighted.
Okay. Bye.
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 Oh, I thought we turn this thing off.
Bye.
Bye.